Yo, what's going on, guys? Jared here. I am once again joined by Chris Bryn, who got which yeah, I can't talk right now. Was it top four at the OTS championship
No,
your score?
I got fifth. I got
I got
fifth,
fifth.
and then I gave my top eight. We needed top four for invite, and I had my invite already, so I lost in top eight. Wink, wink.
You conceded.
I conceded quickly.
Playing mutant. Yes. No. I don't know how else to word it. It's
Just mutant.
It's
There's
just
nothing
mutant.
else in here.
You
It just is mutant.
If you don't know what these cards do, I would not be surprised, as I only know what one of them do off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am going to hand it off to you, Chris, to explain the theory, reasonings, why and how it works, and yeah.
Well, I think mutant's weirdly positioned well right now. The reason why I was looking at it looking for decks like this in the first place was because right now there's this thing going on where all the decks are super high ceiling and also weak to medium hand traps, but then like a handful of them require you to have big hand traps like Droll and Nibiru and etc. But then and so as a result, everyone's kind of settling on Droll and Nibiru and etc. right now. And there's a lot of like big hand traps that like ask your opponent to be playing meta kind of right now. And then also at the same time, like cards like There Can Only Be One are pretty good. And then opening like three hand traps is good. So I was looking for decks that are kind of good at living in that environment, just having like a million hand traps and also like being able to play with a lot of one card starters. I've played too much Plunder Patrol, so that one was I just didn't want to do that one again. But Plunder Patrol I think fits that. Labyrinth fits that kind of, but I've also played too much Labyrinth.
You're just
So
knocking
I
decks
kind
out
of went,
yourself.
yeah, I kind of like because I had my invite already. I was kind of like, I'm gonna play Mutant today, and I've always liked Mutant. I played it on Master Duel for a little bit. I started an alt account. I started a new account and it got to Platinum. I got to like Diamond 1 with whatever the highest one is now. I can't remember. I haven't played Master Duel in a long time. I got there with Mutants, with Pure Mutants also. So Mutants I've always liked Mutant a lot for that reason. You know what the hand traps are. You know what this whole side of the table is. This is all like here it is. You know what these are.
I will say you did say that there's a lot of non-engine. This is definitely a lot of non-engine.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And the
9,
deck
12,
is very
15.
good at like. It's just fine that you run this much non-engine.
I mean, it's 20 non-engine. That is a lot for a deck like this.
Mm-hmm. So the deck comes back to Mutant M-05 when it's normal summoned or special summoned. You can add a level 4. You can add any mutant monster from your deck to your hand. Mutant ST-46 when it's normal or special summoned. You can add a mutant spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Mutant Mutant. If you control a mutant, you control a mutant monster. You can special summon it from your hand, and then you can. But then like so those are those three. Those are the consistent cards. You can imagine how those kind of link into everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all level 3 or lower psychic. So then you run 3 E-Tellies also. So all 9 of these, all 12 of these fully start the deck. The Mutant Expansion is an E-Telly in the deck also, but because it's a trap, I have it at 1. I think if I was going to play this again, I'm not sure I ever will, but I might. I'd probably bump this up to 2 or 3. Just so that you brick even less. Take the Clash out. The Clash was a weird experiment that I actually kind of like the Clash. But it felt in practice it felt a little win more, I guess. It's bad to draw and good to search, but when I searched it, I didn't need to search it. And then I think I'd run one of the pots, but I didn't feel like it was necessary for this particular tournament.
I was actually going to say, would pots like fit well in this deck? Because I feel like it's very
kind of, yes,
normal.
But the issue is that the pots seem like they would be good, but you actually get a draw every turn off a field spell. And it conflicts with all the pots. I was thinking about running Prosperity, but then again, you can't do this. Another thing this deck has, I'll show you later, is that you make very high attack point, not like just very big boards, but with like less snowball effect than other people. So on the turn where you're winning, you need to attack for game, and so Prosperity fits poorly into the deck for that reason as well. So there's a bunch of issues why with all of the pots, but I think I should still be running at least Extravagance, I think. Because the deck has like weird advantage issues. I don't think you need Prosperity to find starters because this deck has just too many starters to begin with.
Okay.
Which is why I think I would bump this up instead of running pots, but then I still would rather run Extravagance, I think. You have to run one of each of these at least. I know some people run more than one of some of them, like of Beast. I kind of wanted to once in a while, but there's ways to put them back if you draw them. Myutant Cry is ridiculous. I guess I'll explain all those later. for now, I think the easiest way to show why the deck is strong enough is just to show like what E-Tele does by itself.
Oh, is he? It's like an actually just like a one card like combo
Yeah,
type
yeah,
thing.
it's all one card. There's no two card combos. You just have one. Actually, they all stack. If you have two cards, you do two things.
What?
But
What?
it's a real like I have one E-Tele and 4 hand traps. Are you
Bro,
scooping? And
this is
they say yes very often.
bro. This is
Um,
mutant. What are you talking about? It's mutant. That doesn't do that.
yes, it's always done that. It's done that from day one. So you can go E-Tele in the draw phase, obviously in the draw phase. So E-Tele draw phase, special summon M-05. M-05 can add any mutant monster. So you add ST-46. So then you normal summon ST-46 in your main phase. On normal, it adds a spell or trap. You add Mutant Evolution Lab. So every mutant has a tribute for cost and then banish for cost from your hand or field, or the little ones do. So this one you would tribute M-05 for cost, banish ST-46, and then it'll summon a mutant. Each of them has. There's this thing that happens where depending on which one you banish for various things, you summon a different one.
Mm-hmm.
So when a mutant monster or card, I guess, when a mutant monster banishes a monster for cost, it'll always summon Mutant Beast. When it banishes a trap for cost, it'll always summon Mutant Arsenal. And when it banishes a spell for cost, it'll always summon Mutant Mist. So these three guys are just bananas. They're just crazy bananas. The one that they banish defines which one they can't be targeted by. So this one that banishes a monster for cost, it can't be targeted by monster effects.
Oh, okay.
This one that banishes a trap for cost, it can't be targeted by trap effects. This one that can't be targeted, can't banishes a spell for cost, it can't be targeted by spell effects. If your opponent activates a spell card or spell effect, this one lets you banish a card from your hand or field to negate the activation and banish that spell. This one, if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish a card you control from a card from your hand or field, target a monster your opponent controls, and banish it. This one is if your opponent activates a trap card or effect, you can banish a card from your hand or field to draw 2. So
Okay.
those are the 3 effects. Every one of them interacts with all 3 card types, basically.
Mm-hmm.
This one, if it's destroyed, it adds a mutant trap. It adds a banished mutant trap from your deck to your hand. This one, if it's destroyed, it adds a banished mutant spell to your hand. This one, if it's destroyed, it adds a banished mutant monster. I think.
Okay. I like how they just all have like 8 effects.
Yeah, so each of them has something. They can't be targeted by one of the 3 types. They interact when your opponent uses the second of the 3 types,
Mm-hmm.
and then they add back from your banished a mutant card of the third of the 3 types. So that's how they line up.
Yeah.
They're all level 8. They're all huge. This is 24, 24, 3000, 1000, 27, 29.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that works. So then because the M-05 gets tributed to banish the ST-46 from your field, now you can summon Mutant Beast, which is the spell negate and can't be targeted by monsters. Coincidentally, that's obviously the best one.
Right.
And then you can activate Mutant Lab. Lab will summon when Mutant Lab is activated, it special summons a mutant monster from your hand or your banished, level 4 or lower one. So you can summon the ST-46 back, and you contribute that to banish this for cost, and that'll summon Mutant Mist. And so that is 5 summons, and sometimes you kind of stop early or keep this in your hand because you kind of only care about the beast. So if you have like 4 hand traps or something, it'd be reasonable to keep this in your hand for follow up later because you can do this on your next turn and still get the on summon effect again.
Right.
So you can just keep the lab in your hand and just stop, and then you'll have the beast and 4 hand traps, right? Or if you're like there can only be one and stuff, it's better to just leave this out here, and leave this in your hand. But if for some reason you don't care about Nib, or if you're playing through some stuff, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You can tribute, banish, summon this. Now, if your opponent activates trap, you draw 2, which does come up like against like Labyrinth. You can go all the way into this, and your opponent will just have to deal with the fact that you're going to draw 2 at some point. And that's the one card, which is it's very card efficient, and it gives you a lot of like varying options.
Is that
There's
only
points in
off
this
E-Tele,
combo.
or is that either normal summon too?
No, that was just your E-Tele. Oh wait, no, there is a normal summon. You use your normal summon, yeah.
Is there a? Well, I'm saying like if you draw like one of the STs or the other normal.
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. So if you normal, so let's say you open ST-46. It's different depending on which one you open. If you open M-05 and it adds a monster, you would add Myutant Mutant. So Mutant, you can special it from your hand if you have a mutant monster. You contribute it for cost, and then banish a card from your deck for cost. So you would banish ST-46, and then that'll summon Mutant Beast from your deck. When you do that, you do take 2400 damage. So you take damage equal to the attack of whatever you summon. So it's always a lot. And then from there, the M-05 is just sitting there. You can use it to with a card in your hand to summon another one, or Depending on the situation, sometimes you'll just turn these into an IP, if that makes sense, or an SP. Ideally, you want to have like a second card with this, but you can get far enough, right? This is kind of good enough. You can also just go M-05 if you don't want to leave like resources up. You can use M-05 to add like a different one. A lot of the times, this turning into anima and then SP was enough going second too. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. But getting the mutant beast into play puts you in a very good position. I think the normal scenario is that when you're doing this, you want to have any monster in hand. So let's say you have like a Veiler, right? A Veiler that you know you're not going to use. Because what you want to do is you want to tribute the mutant to banish a trap from your decks. You would banish Mutant Cry. Or Mutant Clash, no, Mutant Expansion probably. And then summon the trap one, which is Arsenal. So if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish a card from your hand or field, and banish a monster they control. All these can banish themselves for cost, by the way. Which comes up under skill drain and etc. So this deck doesn't lose to skill drain. You can run skill drain yourself, but I don't think it's good enough for various reasons we'll talk about later. And then you contribute this to banish a monster from your hand to summon the beast. So now when the beast is destroyed, it will add back the expansion for follow-up also, so you can just keep doing stuff.
Gotcha.
That's kind of how the deck works at the inside level, like the first time. But like this isn't a big combo deck. It's like every card you open does enough to get you to the next time you summon that same monster again. Do you know what I mean? Like you just whittle them down.
It has recyclability,
like
I'm assuming,
like,
right?
Yeah, it has that like runic slash Sky Striker kind of feeling to it, if you know what I mean by that. Whereas like, so if you open ST-46, I actually very often just add expansion, and then on my opponent's turn we'll just expansion for M-05. But I only do that if I have like another card. Ideally you want to like do this and then tribute this and banish a monster from your hand. But with all that said, that comes back to where this deck starts to become a problem. Because just that alone is like good enough. You're always opening 4 hand traps, right? That's whatever. But this deck kind of circles around to becoming crazy when you get to Mutant Fusion, which you search a lot and or open a lot because you run 2. I'm thinking about running a third, but I think it'd probably be too much. But Mutant Fusion says fusion summon 1 Mutant Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field. If your opponent has activated a card or effect this turn, you can use up to 1 monster each from your deck or graveyard as fusion material.
Oh, that is.
Yeah, if they use any card at all. So what ends up happening?
So wait,
one from your deck and one from your graveyard if they use any card during the turn.
So if you go like normal summon, search, or you go like use the effect to tribute itself, they like add shit. You could just like fusion's like the punish. Fusion. It's like a punish.
Yeah, just fusion from your deck. Yeah.
Okay, that's
and so the first one you can make is synthesis, which is 2 mutants with different attributes. This one's kind of weird because you have to use a big one. And part of the issue with this one is that it's kind of mediocre, but it's actually just good enough a lot of the time. It only has 2,500 attack and 22,000 defense. It's level 9. When it's fusion summoned, you target a card on the field and destroy it. It does target, right? Yeah, target a card on the field, destroy it. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, activate this effect. For the rest of this turn, this face-up card is unaffected by the effects of an opponent's card of the same type, monster, spell, or trap as that card. So if they activate like Lightning Storm and you chain to protect it from spells, right? It's unaffected by spells for the rest of the turn.
Right. Yeah.
And then if it's destroyed, you add back any banished fusion mutant card. So every one of these big guys, when they're destroyed, you add back a mutant card, and you're kind of just trying to make sure you're set up so that you get one back when they're destroyed because they all just started again by themselves.
So it really just seems really annoying. Like the whole,
it's very annoying. Yeah. It feels like you keep thinking like there's no way I won't be able to deal with this. Because a lot of decks I found I put up synthesis and they'd never deal with it. It'd be impossible for them. You know what I mean? Because they'd be like, oh yeah, I'll use a monster and I'll chain it becomes unaffected by monster effects for the rest of the turn. And they just don't have another way to deal with it. So they'll end up having to attack it. And as a result, they can't kill me, right? And so they'll attack over it and I'll add back one of the little ones on my next turn. I'll just normal it and everything happens again. And it's like, oh, how was I supposed to stop you? I don't know. Because like I'll be interacting too because I'll still have like 4 hand traps in my hand, right?
Yeah.
Or like a Tikaboo or a Droplets. The Droplets and the Tikaboos were very good today. And then obviously all these were very good today. The Ghost Ogres are because I run E-Telly, but I also kind of like Ghost Ogre now.
Do you play the other Mutant Fusion too? Because I know there's another one.
Yes. Yeah. So the other one is the important one because it does come up quite a bit.
We can just do extra deck too while we're just do the whole extra deck.
Yeah, sure. So here's the 2 synthesis because that's the one you make more often, and the 1 Ultimus because if you make it, you're winning. It's a level 10 dark By the way, these are psychic, and the little guys are all psychic. So with there can only be one, you have to kind of play weird minds. But you can do them, and then they can all banish. There can only be one for cost when you tribute stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the level 8 is 30, or the level 10. You have to make it with 3 level 8 or higher fusion mutant monsters. So you can use these, but you have to use all of these too.
Right.
Usually you make this with Mutant Cry. Sometimes you make it with the normal spell. It comes up I guess it comes up each way. This deck in the past used to be a 2 Vertes deck because you would use Verte to send Mutant Fusion over DPE like a lot, even though you ran the Destiny Fusion. Because this card is just good enough.
Yo, I'm not gonna
just
lie.
Ridiculous.
I don't know if people know the old mutant lines between the new mutant lines.
yeah. The old mutant lines involved making Verte to get Ultimus out faster.
This is my
Now you
first
just have
time
to draw
hearing any mutant lines, bro. So
yeah. So Mutant Ultimate says when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can banish one mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face-up field of the same type, parentheses, monster, spell, or trap. Negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. So it's just Macabre, but for the grave. You can banish your grave also.
I like that it's all banished. Everything banishes. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So it worked. The whole deck works under Shifter and under Skill Drain. That's another thing, and under Troll. So all 3 of those don't matter.
Yeah, I just realized I'm surprised you're not playing Shifter actually.
I don't think Shifter is good enough right now, and I think the fact that it's not good enough is why it pisses me off so much when I get Shifted. So I'm playing a deck that doesn't get Shifted, mostly so that if some idiot is playing Shifter anyways, even though it won't be good against half the people they play against, it at least won't be good against me too. You know what I mean?
I love how you get Shifted and you're like, fucking bozo.
Yeah, Shifter is literally, at this point, Shifter's become like a suicide bomb card, is what it feels like. It's like you activate Shifter and you're like, boy, I hope it works this time. And it's just like, it just makes me angry. I understand siding it, and I think I maybe should have been siding it today, actually. The stack maybe should side it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I don't forget.
I'm assuming he also floats as the other ones.
Yeah, the most. If this fusion summon card is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add up to 3 of your banished mutant cards, up to 1 monster, 1 spell, and 1 trap to your hand. So it usually does add 3 back because of the way that that kind of flows. So once you get to this, you'll get 3 back. If it dies, it probably won't die, right? Like you're probably winning. It is 3,500 attack also. Another hallmark of mutants is that all their traps or 2 of their traps, I guess. There's another one, and there's some other continuous ones. A lot of the mutant cards sit on the field after they're activated. So this one says when this card is activated, take a level 4 lower mutant monster from your deck, either add it to your hand or special summon it. If a level 8 or higher mutant monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. So it just sits on the field for you to banish for cost of other ones. Then it can protect from destruction of card effect also. Mutant Clashes, when you activate this card, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls. Banish 1 mutant monster from your graveyard, and if you do, negate its effects until the end of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So this one's just imperm. And then when your level 8 or higher mutant monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can draw 1 card. That effect comes up a lot in the kind of game states this deck forces. There's a lot of like attack over SP, draw a card. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense. Yeah, no,
because your opponent will have an SP and you'll go summon search, and they'll be like, "There's no way I do anything to that." And then you'll tribute it for cost and banish a card for cost, and they're like, "I guess that's fine because you don't have 2 monsters anymore." And then you'll summon beast and just go attack and just draw a card, and it just comes up a lot. The drawing. Mutant Cry is the ridiculous one. This one's a normal trap. During the main phase, fusion summon 1 mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling the fusion materials listed on it from the deck into the deck from among the cards on your field, in your graveyard, and or your face-up banished cards.
Oh, okay.
So just put him back from anywhere, make anything. This is usually how you get to Ultimus.
It also wants to go infinite.
Yeah, and then this will eventually come back to your hand, also off the Ultimus.
Yes, which I like a lot.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the deck works. It just kind of sits forever floating around, and then the non-engine supports the nonsense that you're doing.
Right.
The field spell also, by the way, the field spell draw I talked about. I think I forgot to bring it up. The field spell is every turn you can take a mutant card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck and draw 1, but it doesn't go back for cost, and it doesn't shuffle after putting it back. So it is the ideal kind of like Cosmo field spell thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, like Cosmo Town, get rid of the bad.
Yeah, it's the ideal Cosmo Town. Yeah. Which is why you really only need 1 of each, because you can find the field spell to put stuff back. But it's weird because the field spell summons them out of your banished or hand on activation, and if you don't have one to summon, it feels kind of weird to just activate and put something back without summoning anything.
Right.
But unfortunately, if you're bricked, you have to do that, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of how the deck works in general. I can draw one or two hands just to kind of show how that exactly works in practice.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that's the general idea of it. I didn't pull out the whole extra deck.
It seems more straightforward than
yeah, it's not that complicated.
I was expecting.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. The cards are better than you think, and you have to play somewhat perfectly on a normal Yu-Gi-Oh level. And you get punished for making mistakes because your deck is worse than theirs. But it's kind of fine. This deck also gets helped by, in AGOV, a lot of generic extra deck concepts came out that cause decks to be better when they're capable of putting out random monsters than before by a lot. And in particular, that is the IP and the Typhon, right? Having that kind of like infinite recursion of just tiny little monsters that are like good fodder to just make SP, just make Typhon is really nice.
I always liked that they weren't restrictive. That was my biggest thing with them, that they don't restrict you.
Yeah, they don't restrict you ever. I should be running 2 SPs, and I think the Scelene access code line never comes up. Hiita also, these 3 never come up. They did not come up. I never had a spellcaster. I just never had the Veiler when I thought I would have a Veiler. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't run the Wanted engine, so it's just kind of hard to use. These are important, but I might bump this to 2, or if I go to X-Rab, it'd be 3/3, right?
Is the Wanted engine even playable in this?
Nope. I just brought it up because that's how you usually use Scelene these days. Let's see. These are all for Zeus. You can get to rank 2s and rank 3s very easily. So these are just the good Zeus guys. That came up a couple times. Typhon did not come up, but it will. You know what I mean? Like it does. And then IP, SP, Anima is good. Almaraj is good.
Anima is always that nice unexpected threat.
Yeah, Anima comes up a lot too. Yeah, so that's it. Oh, and the side deck is also very simple. It's also super straightforward. It's literally 3 Drolls, 3 summon limits, 3 Dark Rulers, 3 Evenlies, and then Feather Duster, 2 Lightning Storms. So this deck is so basic of a deck. You don't really do anything, and it's just one of those times where you're like, it's just like, why is this deck good? You just say because the cards are high quality. Like it's just a simple answer.
You know what this kind of reminds me of in a weird way? This feels like a deck that like teaching someone modern Yu-Gi-Oh would be very like okay for.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I feel like it
because it is very simple.
Everything enough, and it's simple in its own aspect. It's non-restrictive.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it what's so good about it is that it is so it's so simple, and it's so like this hand is ridiculous, right? This is just a ridiculous hand. This deck is so simple, and it's so hard to fully stop it because of how many mechanics you're using. You're using like too many mechanics at the same time.
I think it's funny. This is like, I guess, like you playing this deck is an outplay in itself. That if you play E-Telly, I feel like 99% of players are going to assume you are playing punk cards in your deck.
Yeah, they will not ash this. No one on God's green earth would ever ash E-Telly.
And they will not ash an emergency teleport because they are going to assume that it is going to summon a Xiamen, and they want to ash Foxy Tune because that's the proper card to ash in that deck. So
you are a true madman if you ash this. A real legitimate madman. Yeah. And what'll usually end up happening is you'll summon M-05 and they'll ash this, and you'll just still be able to tribute to banish something from your hand.
Yeah, and you still get the thing you want, like still.
Yeah, the thing that matters just doesn't. Yeah, so it's like really hard to accurately stop me ever. If they have an imperm here, it kind of hurts. But in this case, the mutant clash is an imperm anyway, so you have Tikaboo, Mutant Clash, Ash Veiler, like, you know what I mean? They're dead. You know what I mean? And like if you actually get to the ST-46 and then you do everything, then they're really dead. Like if you just like look, when I was saying it earlier, it didn't seem like a lot, but when you actually look at this situation where actually, it should be this one. When you look at this situation where you have monsters can't target this, banish a card to negate a spell or trap, or negate a spell. Ash Veiler, there can only be one. Mutant Clash can banish this to Veiler something else. and then next turn if this survives, it attacks over something and you draw a card. Or like sometimes this will imperm something. Your opponent, you'll negate a spell by banishing this, and then when this gets destroyed, this will get added back. And then on your next turn, this will just summon this, and everything will just happen again, right? And then so at this point, it's just like, what was their game plan ever gonna be through this in the first place? Like, what were they? Because I think for the same reason as Labyrinth and Plunder Patrol, if you look at the way the cards are arranged, because like most of the interactions are in my hand, but there's one interaction in each area of the game, right? So evenly you can't. So if you start trying to list the ways that you can deal with all this, evenly doesn't handle all three. Evenly handles 2 out of 3, but not this one. Kind of doesn't matter. Feather Duster isn't good enough. Really, Raigeki isn't, like, you know what I mean? Like each individual, the interactions are spread too far out.
Yeah.
So like your opponent can't actually blow you out, and if they can't blow you out, then they have to play you. But most decks these days can't, because I think actually no, I saw a tweet or a Reddit post or something about this. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is about action economy and not card economy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like how many actions you're allowed to take versus how many actions your opponent can stop, and then on their turn the same thing again. This deck has a very high. Its composition is good. Its composition is like one of the best I've ever played. In exchange for the cards simply being weaker than they need to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then as a result, your action economy is 6, like every turn forever. Almost always, like however many cards you drew is usually what your action economy is. So then you're just like, yeah, I have 5 cards and I'm gonna use all 5. Like there's no bricks in your hand. You're never gonna like use 2 cards to stop one thing. You're just gonna be like Ash, Veiler, Imperm, normal 1 mutant monster. Did I win? And they'll be like, I guess so. And that just happens like a lot. Like the Mutant Fusion's crazy here, depending on my hand. If I open a starter, maybe I won't. Okay, well, here we go. Here it goes again. I did it. I drew Mutant M-05 right at the end. So, yeah.
I like... This deck is so much more simple than I was expecting, to be honest. I thought it was going to be some...
Yeah.
I think I'm so used to you having some crazy concoction that like it just turning up to being like, yep, this is a mid-range control deck that has 1 card starters. Here we go.
Yeah, and they're all that, and they all do that, and it's very strange to me that nobody read them. I guess would be my response. Why didn't you read these?
Yeah.
Like even this hand is bananas, and there's a lot of times where this deck will end up top decking. Like if you only have 1 starter and they ash you and you have 4 hand traps, like, but then you're both top decking and you will top deck better than them.
How is that bananas? That doesn't look bananas. Is that bananas?
So you can normal this and tribute and banish for cost, and then so you'll banish probably a monster, which means that you can banish mutant. Well, okay. So what's gonna end up happening? You're gonna summon Mutant Beast by banishing Mutant M-05. So later, now you can top deck the field spell and start everything again. And you have Cry and Droplets, and so what that ends up being is you'll have impermanent Droplets. And then you'll droplet something, sending the mist, and then you'll be able to shuffle them all back with the Cry to make the guy that pops 1 and then unaffected. And when he's destroyed by card effects, this will come back and you'll normal summon and do everything again.
I see.
So
so
it doesn't look like anything, but I'm still getting that many interactions and that many. You know what I mean?
Dude,
like what are they?
This is just Goaty all over again.
It is. It's just good. It's just good. That's all it is.
What the hell?
It's so simple.
It's like your Goaty deck. You ended on like 1 thing, and it's just like, okay, go.
Yeah, it's
then
like, sorry.
Like, oh, okay. Activate Hoppier Squadron. It's like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah. Oh, wow. There it is again. Yeah, like, it's interesting because I think because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an action economy game, it's turned into this scenario where a lot of decks crumble to your deck being 6 okay cards every single game forever.
Yeah, as long as all 6 are playable, it feels like that's all that matters.
Yeah, and their odds for that are so low, and your odds for that are so high. It's crazy. That's how it felt with Plunder Patrol too.
How did you like Ogre for this
Ogre
format?
is I think I got lucky on Ogre because it was good against Labyrinth, and then it was good against Fluunderies. It was good against Labyrinth in a weird way where they opened Goofy. No, I just hit the lady. Or the Lovely. They opened Goofy and I just ogred the Lovely on their turn. When they were going to set something. Or when they were going to pop a card in my hand. And then they couldn't set something, and then they couldn't pop again on my turn. And it was just good enough that happened. Yeah. And that's another situation where like Labyrinth invested like 3 cards to produce like 2 good interacts, but it doesn't matter because all 6 of mine are single interacts on their own. So they just never caught up as soon as I started playing. And then Ghost Ogre was not that good otherwise. You know what? No, I played against Virtual World, and the Ghost Ogre was good against them.
Okay, yeah, of course. I'm assuming,
but I think with Centurion coming up, it's getting better too. Yeah,
that was gonna be my next statement. I was gonna say Centurion and Pearly. It's still fine against those matchups.
Yeah, I wanted it for the E-Telly, and I was like, well, maybe I'll play against Centurion, and I didn't, but it worked out anyways.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, that is an interesting pile that I am happy to see something different again. And like I said, I know I messaged this earlier. I had like 3 people ask me like, "Yo, when's the next Chris profile coming? Like, when's the next one? This man's cooking up like some wild shit every time he's on." Bro,
I was in the early wave of Mikanko people, and a lot of us were in a group chat working it out together. But that one's still being kept secret, so I have no information to give about Mikanko. But also, I'm not going to any more YCSs until like February, so I'm kind of in the casual camp for now. So I'm kind of digging back into I've reopened my box of like 3rd wave deck cores. You know what I mean? Where like I have my deck cores box that I carry around, and then I have my 2nd deck cores box that doesn't fit in the first one, and then I have my 3rd deck cores box that really doesn't fit in the second one either. And Mutant was in there. That one is like Mutant and S-Force and like Witchcrafter and stuff is in that 3rd box.
You're actually just playing hard of the underdog in real life.
I want to play Kawaki Meru at another little tournament soon.
I think my biggest takeaway that I would want for people watching this to have is that if you play well and you have the knowledge, and 2, if you put in like generic enough like staple-ish cards, enough non-engine staple-ish cards. I know if you do anything. If you shove enough Ash, Ogre, Imperm, Nig, Droplet into a pile.
If you keep opening 4 different hand traps in one E-Tail, your opponent will just get angry at you. That's true.
Bro, you can play anything. I said the same thing about Infinite before it was like, before Pack Top. That was like, damn, what if it's just 4 non-engine and a connector? That's broken.
It is broken. Another thing I will say about this is like I'm going back to my roots of like I used to say a lot about when you're building a bad deck, you have to build it differently than if you're building a good deck. So an example I have is that a lot of people have been building so there's been a lot of Horus decks popping up lately. That one that's a bad example because those cards are just good enough. When you're building a bad deck, you have to do 2 things. The first thing is you have to check if Konami actually tried to put something in the deck that was unique, because sometimes there isn't that. So like sometimes there's just nothing there. So like, and I might regret this, but in reading the Memento cards, they read too normal and weak to be good, and I don't like them. And I don't think there's a deck behind Memento. But
there is a good one coming out in the next set.
Yes, the ghost, the hat guy, the little hat.
The Karibo.
The Karibo guy, yeah. And he does make a lot of the lines better. But the deck is still it functions like Mutant in the way that its cards kind of line up very well, but it doesn't have that many starters. Like it doesn't have as many starters as Mutant, for example, and then it has more bricks than Mutant also, for example. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I know what you mean.
Its power level drops off a cliff if your hand is the wrong ones.
I don't know if you saw my video on Centurion that I made. I did a little rant about how I'm not being able to believe that Centurion is coming out next to Memento and Valmonica, like as power levels.
Yes, but actually, with that said, what I was about to bring up is that in terms of building a bad deck, I think Valmonica is more suited to being built as a rogue deck than Memento is. Because Memento is too normal and it doesn't have anywhere where there's nowhere you can find like a thread that it has that's better than normal, right? There's no like special condition you can achieve to make the deck suddenly better than other decks. Mm-hmm. So like there's like the game state that it wants to get to where you have the 5k dragon and the 5 monster negates and all that stuff. That's not like different than Apo. Like we know how to handle that already. That's nothing new.
I hate that board. Every time I see it in a video, I watch like 8 Memento videos and they always end on that. And I'm like, bro,
That's not good.
A book
That's
and
a
moon.
3 material Appo at best and nothing else. Why are you showing me this?
And it loses the book. It's an
like what is this? You're an idiot for posting this video. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Now here's the on the flip side with Valmonica. So the Valmonica Link 1 is very good. The one that copies a card, and every one of the copies, the level 4 copies and the Link Monster copies, all copy the cards without copying their name. So they all let you use everyone multiple times, right?
Right.
The Link 1 can only be Link summoned once per turn, but it is a soft once per turn once it's on the field. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, for example, people are making IP Masquerade in that deck, because what you end up doing is you'll make the first one on your turn, and then you'll use the IP to use only itself to make the second one on their turn. Mm-hmm. And then so once that deck hits that point, you can't lose anymore, right? The deck is too powerful once you pass that checkpoint, but it's hard to get to that checkpoint. And so the deck, as a bad deck, does have a game state it can achieve that makes it worth playing that one over anything else. And so when you're building a bad deck, you're kind of looking for those things, if that makes sense. You're looking for like an actual unique point.
I saw Valmonica as more of a as an engine. After I read it and was going through it, I'm like, this deck, it's just not a deck. It doesn't feel like a deck.
Yeah, it's at the back part of another combo. And so I have like a Valmonica deck that I might actually play. One of the big things that happens, like, because you have a game state that's important, right? You have their actual advantages to playing Valmonica as opposed to something else. Mm-hmm. Because you get both of the generic spells are super good. The draw 2, put Ord Search one is very good. Mm-hmm. And the excavate until you hit one or send one for your deck to your grave one is also very good. Between those two, even the Reborn one is pretty good sometimes in the pushing part of the game. Mm-hmm. Between those three just being in your deck, and the fact that nothing locks you, and the fact that they're level 4 fairies and fiends, and the fact that the scales let you pendulum summon any level 4s, you set up this weird scenario where you can build a combo deck that just always burns yourself 3 times after the scale hits the board.
It doesn't so my problem with that was, I know this is kind of going into more of like a podcast type thing that's talking about.
Yeah.
I know this is a mutant video.
Well, I will circle this back around to mutants at the end of it. Actually, I wanted to bring this up for that reason.
You know what? I'll let you do that, because I was just going to say that Valmonica, I feel like is just engine, and I think the life gain and the damage thing are actually like the least important. I think just being one card scales, kind of like monkey board, but you can get rid of like a dead card in the process of it, is like just good enough in pendulum pile, if that makes sense.
But it's the levels, the scale numbers aren't good enough, I think, for that to be the case.
It's 3/5,
I think if it was like a 2 and a it's 3/5. It's only level 4s.
Yeah. Which sometimes, which can be good enough. But
it can be good enough, but it's not. It's not really good enough.
That's why I don't think it's that great. But
again, when you say that, that's the point I'm trying to make about building a good deck versus making a good deck. Because when you're building a good deck, you can look at the full scope of what Yu-Gi-Oh is and try to force and find like a not even always familiar, but like a normal path involving a lot of good cards in the format, right? Because like you can look at the format and be like, here's the most powerful cards in the format, I should be running these. And then you can figure out ways to use an engine to kind of play all those. Mm-hmm. Which is when you're playing Pendulum, it's like, okay, I recognize Pendulum cards, how do I make a good Pendulum deck, right? Mm-hmm. But Valmonica is inherently not a good deck. And so when you're building it, you have to start concentrating the one part of it that is good as much as possible. And so the reason why I say that you wouldn't play Valmonica as a Pendulum deck is because it's not actually good at doing Pendulum things in the first place. It's more important not to identify the deck composition in that case, but how do you make sure that you're always getting 3 counters onto the Demelo? Because it's only after that does it become worthwhile to pick that deck over something else.
That is so funny.
If you try
our directions that we would want to take it is like completely separate. I'm like, I tried, gave up on that side, and I'm just like, this is just scales. I read them as scales. That's it.
Well, so here's the issue. If you build it that way, it'll always just be bad Pendulum. There'll always just be a better version of Pendulum to play. And that's the problem. Because you're not looking for the best version of the deck. You're looking for the version of the deck that's worth picking over something else. You know what I mean? So even though that deck might be better than the combo version I'm playing, it's still worse. It's a worse Pendulum deck. Whereas like the version of it that always hits the Mellow and then makes the Link 1, nothing else can do that. There's nothing else in the game that can get to that game state.
But is that game state better than what other decks are doing?
Exactly. But I think it kind of is. you get a lot of value and you get a lot. Well, okay. So with all that said, with Mutant being a bad deck, it shines in deck composition. And as such, trying to find a big combo and trying to raise the ceiling of this deck doesn't matter because the thing that you can push the hardest in this deck is your deck composition. You can get your deck composition to like perfect ratios and just say, I'm going to draw crazy. And that's all you have to do. I think that's always been where Mutants shines the hardest is that it's just like, yeah, my deck composition is perfect. Suck me. Like if they release 4 starters that all touch, like all search each other, right? Like all 4 of them get to the other 3. It's like, yeah, this is crazy. I'm not going to go any further than this.
It definitely feels more aligned with like like Ryan used Sky Striker deck in a way where it was like all hand traps, non-engine, and then just like a couple striker cards. Like that's kind of what it reminds me of in that aspect for gameplay.
Yeah, like you just say exactly. Yeah, that is true. Oh, this hand's crazy too. Yeah.
But all right, this video is 40 goddamn minutes, so I'm gonna end it.
They always are, baby.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this mutant profile. This is something I never thought I'd have on my channel, but here we are. So
I'll try to do another goofy one soon with another small tournament.
No pressure. So thank you, Chris. Congratulations again. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe. Bye, guys.